In this era of grave spiritual crisis, it is not enough to simply know about your Catholic faith. That is why we need a Catholic toolbox to equip us with the practical skills necessary to live our Catholic faith to reach our ultimate goal, which is heaven for all eternity. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Catholic Toolbox as we hand you the tools to go forth, live the faith, and change our modern world today. Live on the Voice of Charity. And welcome back to another week on the Catholic Toolbox, the art of practical Catholicism. I'm your host and founder, George Manassa, here as we equip you with practical tools to live your faith in our modern world of today. And this week, we're going into the topic of exorcisms, a topic which we shouldn't get too fascinated with. So I brought in a special guest, Father Vincent Lampert. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, George. It's good to be with you again.
It's great to have you. I know we have a bit of a sound here. Hopefully our technicians and our audio engineers are working on it. But I always blame the devil, you know? The devil always likes to get in the way.
Absolutely. The devil always tries to trip us up.
Yes. Okay, so we're going into our topic here today, and that is exorcisms. What do we need to know, Father, about exorcisms? Why are they needed? Or what is the problem that the presence of evil to be removed? For those who haven't listened before to you on the show, I just want to introduce people to what an exorcism is.
So I've been an exorcist for the past 19 years. My number one goal is to work with people who believe they've fallen into the world of the demonic, and then to help bring them the light of Christ. My favorite verse in the Bible is in the book of Genesis, where God says, "Let there be light." And we can say that in an exorcism, the church wants to turn the light of Christ on into the lives of people who've fallen into the devil's darkness.
Okay. So is exorcism, I think now you can be now better, Father.
A little bit better, yes.
Okay, getting a little bit better. The presence of evil is leaving us. That's how I like to say it. So is someone who is possessed, how does somebody get possessed to start with?
Possession can occur when somebody does something either directly or indirectly that opens up a doorway for the demonic into their life. You know, for the average Catholic, if you're living out your faith, you don't really have to worry about the devil. For example, if you're Catholic and you're going to Mass, you're praying, reading the Bible, celebrating the sacramental life of the church, if you know and live your faith, the devil's already on the run. But we're living in an age when faith is in decline. We might even say that Christianity, which built Western civilization, is now being rejected by many people. And that's giving the devil a foothold in society and in the lives of individuals. And the end result can be demonic possession.
Okay, so are there certain activities that can open you up to the demonic?
Yes, whenever I work with somebody, I want to know what the entry point was. Probably the most dominant way are ties to the occult. When people get involved in things like going to see a medium, psychic, magic, witchcraft, all those types of things, they're condemned in the book of Deuteronomy because they go against the first commandment where God says, I am the Lord your God, you shall not have strange gods besides me. And when people turn to the world of the occult, they're trying to circumvent God. And there is a power behind the world of the occult, but that power comes from the devil himself. So when people turn to the world of the occult, they're actually permitting the demonic to act in their life because they're relying on the power of the devil.
Okay. Okay. So there are certain things such as the occult, and witchcraft or New Age practices that can open us up to the demonic.
Absolutely. Because again, when people practice these things, they're relying on the power of the devil. They're actually giving the devil a certain amount of authority over them.
Wow. And is possession or um, any other demonic phenomena, is that a physical phenomena or does that involve the soul?
Demonic possession only is in a physical sense. The soul always remains free because you could say, it's the property of God. But
Yeah.
the devil wants to afflict the human body because the human person is created in the image and likeness of God. We can say that the human person is God's greatest creation, and the devil wants to make a mockery of the human person, believing that when he does so, he's indirectly attacking God himself.
Okay. So I know there's a few other things going on. There's not just possession, but there's other phenomena where we could be afflicted by demonic forces. And what are they, Father? I know there's a couple, three,
Yeah,
possibly.
the church recognizes four types of extraordinary demonic activity. So there is demonic possession. There's also demonic infestation, which is the presence of evil in a location or associated with an object. There is demonic vexation, which are physical attacks, and then demonic obsession, which are mental attacks. Literally, the devil's trying to get inside of a person's head to make them feel as if they're going insane.
Wow. So there's a few things. It's not just somebody's possessed like what we watch in the movies, they start levitating. There are other phenomena where evil can manifest itself. And what's interesting is you said infestation. So there could be evil infesting a particular place.
Absolutely. Technically, we would say that evil is neither here nor there. We say it's here or there if it's choosing to act in a location. So if I'm investigating the possibility that there's a demonic presence in a house, for example, then I would want to figure out what did someone do that caused the demonic to manifest there. For example, were they playing with the Ouija board? Were they doing the seance? Was some type of satanic ritual performed in the home that caused the demon to want to manifest in that location?
Wow. Okay, so there must have been something going on in that particular location for an infestation to happen. Wow. So it's linked to the particular place when we talk about infestation.
Yeah, because demons as pure spirits, they don't have a body, so they don't live at a location. It's something that one is doing that's attracting the attention of the demons that is causing them to infest or be present at a particular location.
It's very interesting. And then we have vexation. Let's talk a little bit about vexation. So are we talking about curses here?
Vexation would be physical attacks. Someone's getting scratches, bites, and bruises on their body that really have no natural explanation other than a demon is afflicting them and causing bodily harm.
Wow. Wow. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of your personal experiences. Maybe not going into too much detail, not to spike the curiosity, but I think people need to be warned and aware out there about these spiritual realities, whether you may believe in God or not, that you may be listening. These are realities based on at least your experience, even if they don't believe. But let's speak about what was it? So there was vexation, sorry, obsession. So obsession is a mental attack.
Yeah, when it comes to demonic obsession, the devil's literally trying to get inside of a person's head so that everything they think is being filtered through the presence of the demonic. For example, somebody might get fixated on the number 666. They begin to see it everywhere in an address, the license plate of the car. They see it on signs. Again, they literally cannot turn that off, and they begin to think that they're going insane.
Wow. And let's speak about for those who deny or don't believe, just think it's all made up. What's your message to them?
There's a lot of people today that believe that demons and demonic possession are a throwback to the time of Christ, to the Middle Ages, to a time when mental health issues were not well understood. But we shouldn't really be asking the question, is it superstition? Is it outdated? But the question is it real? And for the Catholic Church, we've consistently taught that evil is personified in what we call the devil and these other fallen angels. So it's not just something that we've dreamed up, but it's even a very core principle found throughout the Bible, where there's a battle between the kingdom of God and the kingdom of Satan.
Wow. Wow. And this can be very confronting stuff for people listening for the first time. But what I wanted to do is to take some examples from your experience of what you can tell us about
Mm-hmm.
certain real life scenarios that you deal with, because you are the exorcist for your diocese and you deal with these cases on very regularly. I'm not sure if it's today, but I really want a real life uh, scenario of what you go through. What you can tell us, Father.
I was appointed back in 2005. When I was appointed, I became one of only 12 Catholic exorcists in the United States. Today, that number has grown to more than 175. Because I'm publicly known and my bishop gave me permission to be public as a way to help educate people what the church believes about the reality of evil, I currently receive about 3,500 requests a year from people all over the United States and even other parts of the world who believe they're dealing with the demonic and are seeking the help of the church. So I get a lot of calls. I probably deal with more cases of genuine, extraordinary demonic activity than perhaps a regular dialysis who's not publicly known. But again, the ministry is a ministry of charity. So the church wants to try to help people who are being afflicted by the demonic. I trained in Rome back in 2006. I had a Franciscan priest who allowed me to shadow him, and I participated in 40 exorcisms that he performed. And in the 19 years that I've done this ministry, I've seen all kinds of manifestations, everything from levitation, eyes rolled in the back of the head, growling, snarling, acting like an animal, bodily contortions, bodies that drop to the ground and slither like a snake across the floor, then demonic manifest. I worked with a lady one time when the demon manifested, her eyeballs turned green and her pupils became slanted like a serpent. And the demon says to me, "You can't get rid of us. We've been here too long and you're not strong enough." So all the manifestations of the demonic are meant to instill fear because the devil wants me to focus on what he's doing, whereas in an exorcism, I want to focus on what God wants to do in the life of this person. So I've seen all kinds of extraordinary things, but I can tell you after all the years that I've done this, when these manifestations begin, I really just want to laugh and say to the devil, really? That's all that you have is trying to scare someone? Because again, the power of God is greater than anything the devil's trying to do.
And do you often get cases where people levitate like we're watching the movies, or everyone's watching Conjuring or the Exorcist of Beverly Road? Are those scenarios reality?
They can't happen because, the word supernatural means to be outside of nature, and only God is supernatural. There in the book of Genesis, the very first 10 words say, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So that means that God created time, space, and matter. God is outside of that. Now, angelic creatures, we would say they're not supernatural because they were created. And when it comes to demons, we would say they're preternatural. They're above our understanding of nature. That's why when demons manifest, they can do things that we would think would be impossible: bodily levitations, bodily contortions, dropping to the ground and slithering like a snake, crawling up the wall like a spider. Again, all of these things are possible because they're operating above our understanding of the natural world.
Wow. So they take on very human ability uh, when they are possessed, or there is a presence of evil, because uh, uh, these are spirits possessing, so that they come out of their way.
They're
Um,
trying to mimic God because the greatest thing that God did for us is the incarnation. God took on human form in the person of Jesus Christ. And these demons believe that they are imitating God and taking on human form when they possess a human body. But when they do so, they're making a mockery of the human person again. That's why you see they treat the body in an animalistic way. There's the howling, the growling, the hysteria, uncontrollable laughter. So if the human person is God's greatest creation, then the demons say, "Ha, look at you, you're kind of a fool." I had an exorcist friend when he was doing an exorcism. When the demon manifested, the demon looked at him and said, "You stupid monkey, who are you to tell me what to do?" The devil wanted God to unite God's nature with angelic nature, but God chose to unite his nature with humanity. And that was something that the devil simply could not accept. So before the fall, he was Lucifer, the greatest of the angelic creatures, but he couldn't accept that human flesh would be elevated higher. So there's the incarnation. And then even our Blessed Mother, Mary, becomes Queen of Heaven and Queen of the Angels. So human flesh is being elevated higher than himself. And that was something he simply could not accept.
wow. So it was the sin of pride. Very, very deep sin. Yeah. And let's go in and discuss a little bit about the spiritual aspect, because it seems like we're talking about the physical phenomena. This whole phenomena essentially is physical. This whole possession itself.
Hmm.
But let's talk about the ways on a spiritual level that someone could be affected when they're possessed. Is their soul there? Are they aware? Are they restricted with their faculties of intellect and will? That's something I was wondering recently.
It does vary. Some people who are possessed, once the demon takes over their body, they have no recollection of what's taking place. Other people I've worked with will tell me that once the demon takes over, they're like a prisoner trapped in their own body. They're aware of what's going on, but they're powerless to do anything to stop it. And that's important because anytime someone is possessed, once the demon manifests, all the actions of the body are now wholly defined by the demon. So I would never say, if I'm working with John Doe, that John Doe did this or John Doe did that. It would always be the demon did this. But again, the ultimate goal of a demon would be to fracture somebody's life in such a way that they completely reject God.
Wow. Okay, because all this spiritual, the spiritual aspect is affected by this physical phenomena because they're restricted from their faculty of getting out of this, and it definitely will take a toll on your spiritual life. You can definitely say, and that's definitely the objective by the enemy, to take hold of your spiritual life. But I was thinking about how people could spiritually work on themselves to prevent themselves from being possessed or these issues there.
Mm-hmm. You know, I was recently at the National Eucharistic Congress here in the United States. In fact, it took place here in my diocese, the Archdiocese of Indianapolis. And in one of the presentations, there were three bishops discussing the fact that we're no longer living in the time of Christianity. We're now living in apostolic time. So the world no longer has a Christian identity, especially in countries that really were shaped by Christianity. Christianity is being rejected. So now we're living in apostolic times where you think of the early church, where we had to go out and proclaim the good news. And I think that's what we're seeing is needs to happen again, is that a lot of people who grew up in traditional Christian homes are now rejecting all of that. Christianity is not welcome in society. A lot of people have a very negative approach. So we have to present the gospel as they did in the early church. And if you think about apostolic times, something that was very core to that was the practice of exorcisms. So there were more people that were possessed during apostolic times. And I think the reason we see an uptick in people requesting exorcisms is because our faith in Christ is being rejected. Faith in God will lead us in one direction, the lack of faith in another. And because faith is in decline, I think we see more demonic activity in the world today.
Wow, that's a very new point to me, to look at the amount of exorcisms that are taking place or possessions today, and seeing that during the apostolic times there were a large amount of possession and exorcisms happening because of that absence of Christianity. At least the faith hadn't spread as much during the apostolic times as it did in later years. So essentially, in the absence of the Christian faith, the devil can roam free, whether it's in a society or a particular country. Then naturally, if evil is more present, it will manifest itself physically. Is that a right way to see the situation, where the faith isn't present or the faith is threatened? It
Yeah. I was going to say, I
will
think
lead
that
to demonic possession.
the key thing about Christianity is that it's God's defeat of Satan. And if people are rejecting Christianity, then the devil is being set loose again. There's a lot of people that I encounter that say, I kind of grew up Christian, but I'm kind of bored with it. It's not exciting, it's dull. And so they reject Christianity. And that's why people get caught up in things of the occult because they think it's fun and entertaining. And in their mind, it's more vibrant. But the devil is doing all these things to lure people into his deception.
And really, I mean, it's quite clear because if Christ isn't present, then it allows the darkness to overshadow society, to overshadow. I want to speak about objects. Objects. What is the deal with antiques or objects we might find in places, and then there's something going on there with the object
Mhm.
in your experience? Because I have many friends that buy many things from different places, and it's something I've often brought up with them to be aware that they need to get an item blessed. But for our listeners, would you explain what's the importance of an item being blessed?
The question for an object would be whether or not it has been cursed, which means that it's put within the realm of the devil. And that's really what it means to be cursed. Anytime somebody has an object, the question I would ask is it inherently evil? So was the item or the object created specifically with the intention of creating a connection between an individual and an evil spirit? Some items that are inherently evil, think of a voodoo doll, for example, a Ouija board. There is no merit to those. You could not bless those things and make them good. So they're inherently evil. Those things should be destroyed. Someone's going antiquing and they find something and maybe the object's been cursed. Think of dishes, for example. Dishes are not evil. So those items could be blessed, taken out of the realm of the devil, and put back within the realm of God.
I mean, this is absolutely very clear that we have to ensure that we don't bring items into our home that are inherently evil, or perhaps maybe the item have been somewhere associated with evil in your experience. That
Yeah,
could
a lot
also
of times
be.
people might go on trips to Africa. They bring back African art that may be a form of some type of demonic entity within the African culture. They bring these items into their home, and then when they do so, strange things begin to happen. That happens so often here. So many people in the United States that I talk to, they think it's just a decoration, but in reality, they are bringing something demonic into their homes. And when they do so, they begin to see their lives begin to unravel and fall apart. Maybe people and within a family have anger towards one another that seems to escalate. But the demonic is all about division, bitterness, anger, resentment. And the devil will look for any opportunity to get a foothold into people's lives. And he can do that through objects.
Wow, this is very big. So we really have to pay attention to what we bring at home. Would you recommend people get things blessed before they bring it home? So if somebody buys an object, just to be sure, maybe get the item blessed or get the home blessed.
Yeah, I think they could have the items blessed. Even if the Catholic has holy water within their home, they could take the holy water and simply say a blessing over the object. But again, it would be important that it's not something inherently evil, because if something is inherently evil, you can't bless it and make it good.
Okay, I want to talk about curses. people talk about generational curses. What's the deal with that? Do they exist? Or can something be cursed or somebody be cursed?
To curse something or someone means to commend them to the devil. Because if you bless someone or something, you commend it to God. This whole notion of generational sin, generational curses, there's a lot of debate in the world of exorcism, whether or not a curse can come down the family line. And it can happen if a family member makes a pact with the devil and then in doing so permits the demons to afflict down through the generational lines as a way to gain particular favors from the demons.
Mm-hmm.
So I did an exorcism in the state of Alaska. And it was a young woman who was possessed. And her grandmother said that her parents, her mom was a witch in their village, that her father was the shaman, and they made a pact with the devil saying that if they could get certain powers and abilities, they would allow the demons to afflict down through the generational lines.
Wow. So these things do exist and they're not made up. But let's talk about how people can remove these generational curses or curses. Can they be removed?
Oh, absolutely. Because again, curses are rooted in the power of the devil, and we know that the power of God is greater. Curses are only effective if we're weak in our faith. Somebody may try to curse us, for example. We can't stop what they're doing, but we can render that effective by doing what St. Paul says in his letter to the Ephesians, putting on the armor of Christ. So if we're truly rooted in our faith, wearing the armor of Christ, we encounter a witch or somebody who's trying to curse us, it will have no impact on us whatsoever if we're truly rooted deeply into our Catholic faith.
And I want to go into the subject of other religions. Do you often find that other religions come to you as an exorcist for help?
Yeah, half the people who contact me are not Catholic. They come from other
Ah,
Christian faith traditions, other world religions, even no
wow.
faith
So half the
background
people that
whatsoever.
contact you. Wow. So half the people that contact you are not Catholic.
The church does use exorcism as a ministry of charity, so the church wants to provide some help or guidance to those who are dealing with the demonic. And I will say a lot of the people who contact me today aren't really, they don't really belong to a church anymore. Maybe they grew up in a particular faith tradition, but they kind of abandoned that and they kind of entered into this whole world of magic and witchcraft. Then they realized they were in for their heads, and then they were turning to the church for help.
Okay. What numbers are we talking about, Father? All these people that contact you that are legitimate cases of possession, hexation, infestation. Are they in the thousands? Are they in the hundreds that we're talking about?
I deal with thousands of these cases every year,
Thousands
literally
every.
thousands. Now, demonic possession is real, it does happen. Maybe one of every 5,000 cases is demonic possession. A lot of the situations that I deal with are demonic infestation, demonic vexation, and demonic obsession. And sometimes I deal with people that are just suffering mentally, and I will try to connect them with an appropriate mental health care provider.
Yes, of course. And if you're listening, this does not count as professional advice. Do seek a relevant professional, a medical professional, or a relevant professional, and consult with them. And you're there on the spiritual side to see if this is a legitimate case where somebody has been possessed, hexed, vexation, infestation. everything else there. But that's a profound number, thousands per year. That's just you.
Thousands per year, yes.
That's just you alone.
That's just me. And I network with a lot of other exorcists here in the United States, and they are just as busy as well.
Wow. So it really goes to show in a post-Christian culture where the darkness overshadows, these cases are arising. I mean, the greatest tragedy is the spiritual death of our culture, where people are separated from God. I mean, that's the real tragedy. It's not obsession, is it? All these physical phenomena, but it's really the fact that we're living in the absence of God. That's the real tragedy and the salvation of our soul. But for these demonic activities to be on the rise, it really correlates to the loss of faith in our culture.
Absolutely. Again, goes back to what I said earlier. Faith in God leads in one direction, the lack of faith in another. And because people are rejecting God, it's kind of unleashing the demonic into their lives. A lot of times people turn to the demonic, believing that somehow they can control the devil. But in reality, the devil always ends up controlling us.
Wow, this is really profound. So you could say demonic activity increasing, as we see throughout the world, is a symptom of spiritual loss, or does that follow naturally when there is a spiritual loss?
I think it's because of the spiritual loss that we see the uptick in demonic activity. So a lot of people today just simply do not believe in God. The number of people that claim to be an atheist, for example. The devil, we talk a lot about the extraordinary activity of the devil, but the devil really, his ordinary activity is something that all of us need to be aware about because it's a four-stage plan of attack. Very few of us will ever have to deal with vexation, obsession, or possession, but we do need to be aware of how the devil tries to trip us up in the ordinary activities of our daily lives. So it begins with deception, which leads to division, which leads to depression, which leads to discouragement. So deception, the devil gets us to buy into his lies. Think of the line in the Eve garden. Basically, you don't need God, you can be God. When we buy into that lie, we find ourselves divided. There's the division. We're broken. And then that brokenness leads to diversion. We turn to things that we believe are going to help put the pieces of our lives back together. But no matter what we do, it always leaves us even feeling even more empty on the inside. And that leads to discouragement. And when we arrive at discouragement, we have two choices to make. One pathway leads to death, always spiritual, the complete rejection of God. Sometimes death in the physical sense. Think of the rising trend of suicide in society today, even assisted suicide, convincing people that things would be better if they didn't exist. But because we're Christians, we're people of hope, the other pathway leads to discipleship. We have a reawakening of the importance of God in our lives, and we invite him in. Either we invite him in for the first time, or we re-invite him back into our lives. And I think going back to what we touched on earlier about apostolic times, that's where we find ourselves. And now we really need to tell people you need God in your life, because I believe the human person has the innate desire for God. And when we do not foster that desire for God, is when we lose our sense of identity, purpose, and direction. Think of St. Augustine, where he says, "You have created us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." So only God can give human life ultimate meaning and purpose. And if we're broken, to put the pieces of our lives back together again. I worked with a young man here in the city of Indianapolis who was worshiping the devil. So when I went to visit him at the request of his older brother, this young man ran into his room, closed the door, and then the demon manifested. So we opened the door, and there's the howling and the screams. But when I looked around the room, this is what I saw. There was no furniture in his bedroom. There were no curtains on the windows, no pictures on the wall. The floor was covered with broken glass from wall to wall. This young man was laying on top of the broken glass. The only thing in his room was an altar to Satan, and he was chanting and glorifying the devil as he was laying on top of this broken glass. But again, there's that sense of brokenness. And that's the only thing the devil will give us is brokenness. It is in our relationship with God where we find, again, the sense of cohesion, meaning, and purpose in life.
That's absolutely amazing. I want to touch on the saints. Some saints like Saint Padre Pio and others, and you read the Desert Fathers in the early church, experience demonic possession. What's the deal with that? I understand it's a physical phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously that may be self-explanatory, but I wanted to go into detail with that. Why were they able to be possessed?
There is something called demonic oppression. So people are being afflicted by the devil, not because they've done anything wrong, they created an entry point, but it's a gift from God. So think about that for a moment. Probably not a gift that many of us would want, but God is permitting someone to be attacked by the demonic as an opportunity for that person to grow in holiness and virtue. So again, you talk about St. Padre Pio, Job in the Old Testament. St. Paul himself talks about the thorn in his flesh, the messenger from Satan that was sent to torment him to keep him from becoming proud. I think God permits some people, you think of the great church, to be afflicted by the demonic as a way to get to know the enemy. Because when the devil manifests, we learn certain things about his behavior, characters, and qualities. We can learn, and then we know how to defeat him. Because ultimately, the devil would prefer to remain hidden. But in an exorcism, he's forced to show himself. And again, going back to Padre Pio, he helped so many people who were afflicted because he learned a lot about the devil by the afflictions that the devil was doing to him. One of my favorite stories about Padre Pio, he called the devil Old Bluebeard. And one night he said he was sleeping. He heard all kinds of noises in his room. He woke up and there's the devil manifesting in his room. Padre Pio looks at the devil and says, "Oh, it's only you, Old Bluebeard. I thought it was somebody important." And then he rolled over and went back to sleep. Now, how many of us would have that courage and conviction if we believe the devil was actually manifesting in our room?
Yeah, it seems like Padre Pio was quite casual with the idea that the devil entered his room and turns to him and says, stop bothering me.
There's many other great saints. Every exorcist will have kind of favorite saints that are invoked in the Litany of Saints during an exorcism. So St. Padre Pio, certainly. I think of St. John Paul II, St. Gemma Galgani, St. Rita of Cashel, St. Clare, St. Francis of Assisi, even the new saint, Carlo Acutis. Many exorcists now find his intercession to be very powerful. I had the opportunity to be in Italy last month and was in Assisi and was able to see the body of Carlo Acutis.
Yeah. So let's now go into 3 practical tools. What's your advice for people to keep the devil at bay. Not on maybe perhaps on a spiritual level, but perhaps with demonic possession as the focus, to stay away from this sort of evil and to keep it away, keep it at bay. What are 3 practical tools that you advise our listeners to put into action today?
I would say don't become fascinated with the devil. Don't believe that God and the devil are on the same playing field. Sometimes people will say, well, God has power, the devil has power, so I'm going to tap into either one that I believe will benefit me. Never turn to the devil, because initially things may seem to be beneficial or good, but ultimately when people turn to the demonic, things will quickly fall apart and get out of control. So never turn to the world of the demonic. I think other practical advice is to simply live out our faith. Nobody has to be kind of a religious fanatic, for example, but again, go to Mass, pray, know the Word of God, read the Bible, celebrate the sacramental life of the church. You feel like you've made a bad mistake, go to confession. Every exorcist will tell you that confession is a powerful tool to defeat the devil, because when we confess our sins and put them in the hands of God, the devil can no longer use them against us. The other thing we should do is to know and live out our faith. There's a lot of people today who simply don't know what it means to be a Catholic. So we don't have to do anything extraordinary to defeat the devil. It's the very ordinary aspects of our faith. And again, we're all sinners. We all fall short. And when we do, simply give that back to God, because the greatest thing that we can know in life are not the sins we commit, but God's love and mercy.
Absolutely. And we can't become obsessed with this. We just need to get what we're called to do, to become saints, to grow closer to God, because that's the real tragedy, not the possession issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's if we lose our soul for all eternity. That should really scare us the most. It didn't seem like Padre Pio was scared of the devil. Many of the saints were scared of the devil. They were more scared of losing their soul. And that's the sort of attitude we have to have.
Yeah, that's the danger, where the devil tries to convince us that he does not exist. Because then when we don't believe in the devil, then he can kind of work discreetly. And in doing so, really just cause our lives to fall apart.
So, Father, thank you so much for being here on tonight on the Catholic Toolbox show. It's always a pleasure. We apologize for the sound echoing here tonight, but we always get attacked by the devil every time we do a topic like this. But thank you for being here tonight on the show, Father. It's always a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure. God bless you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Catholic Toolbox. Don't forget to subscribe to the weekly podcast alert at thecatholictoolboxshow.com. That is thecatholictoolboxshow.com, and subscribe to the podcast on all platforms. So, thank you for tuning into the show. I'm your host and founder, George Manasseh. Until next week, God bless, take care, and take action.
In this era of grave spiritual crisis, it is not enough to simply know about your Catholic faith. That is why we need a Catholic toolbox to equip us with the practical skills necessary to live our Catholic faith to reach our ultimate goal, which is heaven for all eternity. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Catholic Toolbox as we hand you the tools to go forth, live the faith, and change our modern world today. live on The Voice of Charity.